I know that this is the middle of the day, so I want to be very sensitive to everybody's time and go ahead and get started. First, want to introduce myself. I'm Doug Sloan. I work with the Metro Planning Department, and we're obviously excited about the attendance that we have here today. I'm trying to find the right place to stand so that this isn't a problem. We're excited about coming here today to talk about the past and the future of professional baseball here in Nashville. And I realize that 2 o'clock is a little bit of an odd time to have a community meeting. Can you hear me now? Okay. I realize that 2 o'clock is a little bit of an odd time to have a community meeting, but we wanted to try and get all the information out to the public as quickly as we could and go ahead and talk about the work that's already been done with the state and with Metro, show the site plan at the early concept stage, which is where we are now, and hopefully get community input as early as we could. This is the first time that we were going to be able to have both the folks from the architect and the finance department and my office all here at one time, so we went ahead and put it together today. But I see from this crowd, it doesn't seem to have inhibited attendance very much. It's a much bigger crowd than we anticipated, and we're certainly happy to see that. The old Sulphur Dell Ballpark was used for nearly 100 years, from 1870 to 1963. It was located between what is now Jackson Street, 4th and 5th Avenue, and Harrison. The site plan that we're going to be discussing today sits over that same property where the old Sulphur Dell Park was before. At the planning department, we feel like that this is a real keystone site. It ties together Germantown, Salem Town, Hope Garden, Buena Vista, historic Buena Vista, also Jefferson Street, and ties all that together along with Riverfront, Capitol Mall area, and downtown, and just the greater Capitol View area into the downtown area, and we believe that it'll tie all those together in a fantastic way. We also have, in our discussions with the state, seen some of the plans the state has for the property that is adjacent to where this site is and to the Bicentennial Mall, and those will also be shown on the site plans that we'll have available for everybody to see after the panel finishes discussing this. The purpose of today's meeting is to inform the community about the discussions between Metro and the state about the possible future development of the area south of Jefferson between Bicentennial Mall and Cumberland River, and show the community the site plan for the area. Once the panel has finished discussing the site plans, then we're going to open it up to discussions. We've handed out, and I hope that when people came in and signed into when they came in, that they signed up with comment cards and questions. So if you'll fill out the comment and question cards and make sure that you hand those back in, either there at the table, but we also have some folks, if you'll hold your hands up, from the planning department who will collect those cards, and then once the panel's finished, I'll go over those. I'll try to consolidate them. Again, we want to be sensitive to time today. I'll consolidate them into the basic questions that those cards will present. We have found, because we hold these sort of community meetings throughout Nashville, that a lot of times you get the same questions. So we'll try to collect those and ask those in a concerted way to the panel. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to Rich Riebling. He's the finance director for the Metropolitan Government and a baseball enthusiast.
I was a bigger enthusiast before the Cardinals score last night, so if, I'm not sure about that now. Before I start and try to give a little context for how we got to where we're going to be here today, I would like to recognize all of the elected officials. We have 2 state representatives here, Brenda Gilmore and Jason Powell. If you stand up. Appreciate you being here very much. We have numerous members of the city council here. I think I've got them all written down, and if I didn't, I'm bad. Obviously, Erica Gilmore, whose district we're in. Appreciate Erica being here. We have Walter Hunt. We have Ronnie Stein, chairman of the Budget Committee. We have Jerry Maynard, who has a red shirt on up here near the front. We have Doug Pardue. I think Doug's in the back. Bill Pridemore, Phil Claiborne, and Scott Davis. And Karen Johnson. I'm sorry, and Karen Johnson also is here. Berkeley Allen, I did not see Berkeley has arrived. So we really appreciate the members of the council coming to this event. We also have a couple former members of the council here. I love to do the introductions. It's a good part. I don't have to get into substance. I can just do introductions. We have Leo Waters, who serves here. Everybody knows Leo. And we got a couple former council members who are also very active in the Old Timers Baseball Association. My good friends, Rip Ryman and Jim Forcum, who are here as well. Great people. All right, I think that's done the introductions. I think I got everybody. The other person I should recognize, part of this transaction will involve the Sports Authority of Nashville. We have the chairman of the Sports Authority, J.D. Elliott here, and Helen Waters, and Lauren Brisky from the Sports Authority. So we have several Sports Authority members here as well. So a good turnout of individuals. What I want to do is just talk a few minutes about sort of what has brought us to this place and why we are now having discussions about potentially building a new home for the Nashville Sounds here in Germantown area, North Nashville area, Jefferson Street area, Sulphur Dell area of town. As you know, there's been talks for many years about a new ballpark for the Sounds. The Sounds ballpark was built in 1978, opened in 1978, and to my record is the second oldest AAA ballpark in the country right now. There's 30 AAA baseball teams, and I believe Greer Stadium is the second oldest in the country. There's been a lot of talk about a ballpark, but really nothing specific has come to plans. In 2011, we engaged a firm called Populous, who is an architectural planning firm that has designed more baseball, football, sports arenas than anyone in the country, to do a site study to say where would be a good location for a new home for the Nashville Sounds in Nashville. They identified several locations and sort of focused in on 3 finalists, one of which is the Sulphur Dell area that we're here today. We really didn't want to get into much discussion about this until now because until you sort of have a discussion about the land, it's sort of premature to really get into a discussion about where to build a baseball stadium. But over the past several months, we've had several discussions with the state of Tennessee. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, you got it. Perfect. That beat me to it. As you can see from the chart, all of this property in red, all of this property really here, is owned by the state of Tennessee. And if we were going to talk about building a ballpark in Sulphur Dell area, we really had to start with discussions with the state of Tennessee to see their willingness to involve some sort of land transaction that would make that land available. We've now had those discussions. They're ongoing. We don't have a decision. There's no commitment yet by the state, but we thought they had advanced to a further along point that it was time to sort of start presenting the outlines and the concepts of what we wanted to do with the baseball. So our plans are to continue discussions with the state, and we would hope that in the coming weeks that we're going to file legislation with the council that would outline in detail all the various property transactions and the financing plan for the stadium. I think at the end we'll get into some of the benefits, but I think a critical element of this whole transaction is in this property right down here. As you know, all of this right now is surface parking lots that are used by state employees during the day. And part of this transaction would be we would build about a 1,000-car garage at the south end, right in this area, which would be used to replace and provide some additional parking to the state. So that's kind of a critical piece of the transaction, and then the next speakers will get into that a little more detail. So with that background, what I'd like to do is introduce the next 2 speakers who are going to sort of do a little tag team. They're both architects. We have Bruce Miller, who is with Populous, which I already said is really one of the biggest, largest, probably have designed more stadiums than anybody in the country. And Ron Gobble, who's a local architect with Gobble, Hayes & Partners. Ron is sort of serving, his firm is serving as the project coordinator, while Bruce's firm is working heavily on the concepts, bringing their expertise to the project. So with that, gentlemen, it's your show.
Thanks, Rich. As Rich said, our firm is project coordinators. We're working with Capital Project Solutions to help go through this transition phase to look at the properties and how they might lay out. We are in the very early stages of design. In fact, this is all pre-design. We are looking at what we can accomplish, what we can fit on the site, and how we can make all these things make the most sense. As you well know, this site, which is right down in this area right here, we've got a lot of established neighborhoods: Buena Vista, Hope Gardens, Germantown, Salem Town, in that area that's really developing and beginning to flourish. And our goal is to kind of fill in this hole in this area here and really try to make that development come along. So. Again, some of the things, if you go farther south, we've got 2nd Avenue, Upper Broadway, the Gulch. All of that's actually in walking distance of the site. You can just keep going. We've got, this is where the site is right now. It's in this area right here. I don't know if you can see this in the back, but as Rich pointed out, that's all surface parking lots right now. Okay. The 5th Avenue is turning out to be a very important street in Nashville. If you look at the south end of it, the new convention center, the Hall of Fame, the arena, you come up the hill, you've got the Ryman Auditorium, you've got the Avenue of the Arts. As you go across the hill, you've got the Municipal Auditorium. And then you've got this leading all the way to Jefferson Street. And that being the Avenue of the Arts and a major north-south pedestrian corridor, as much as anything, in a redevelopment district, is part of what we're looking at doing and trying to tie all that together. This is roughly the location of the old Sulphur Dell. Sulphur Dell fit in between 4th and 5th, and you'll see what that did to the ballpark in just a minute. Those of us who remember visiting Sulphur Dell as kids know that was a unique ballpark. Give me the next one. This is the back of a building that actually faced on Jackson Street, and that's where the scoreboard was. And all around the outfield was a bank, and that essentially made the fences farther out. And if you look at some of the surrounding things, like there were oil tanks, or that's Piedmont Gas there. That was a natural gas tank that was around it. So it always had an industrial feel to this area. There was a cold storage area. There's the old Nashville Valve symbol, which was out in center field. This is the kind of crowds that they used to draw. And like I said, I lived in Waynesboro, Tennessee, and drove the 100 miles up, or my parents drove me up to go to games. So I got great memories about the place.
Well, first I want to say I'm really excited to be here today. To have our first meeting and draw a crowd like this, to me, is just amazing. It's exciting. I think it speaks to the importance of this project in the community. I think you've got a great site here. Not only the historic nature of the site, but it's a great urban ballpark site. This project, we think, is going to knit together many different areas of the community. We've even heard that some of the surrounding neighborhoods are beginning to call themselves the Capital District or the Ballpark District. We think that's really important in that the ballpark's going to help to brand the area as a place that people want to come to, a place that people want to be a part of. And so what we're trying to do with the ballpark is not just create a ballpark, but really create a neighborhood. We think a neighborhood with year-round activity, street activity, more eyes on the street is going to make it a great livable area right near downtown Nashville. And so we think that's one of the things that sport can bring to a community. It's a public gathering place. It's a place that will serve as open space. One of the great attributes of the site is the public greenway that currently exists. Albeit maybe underused, we think it's a great asset that the ballpark really will begin to reinforce and really become a significant part of as we move forward. So the ballpark is centered within the block. between 3rd Avenue and 5th, between the Greenway and Jackson. Ron talked about the historic footprint. The historic footprint was almost half, which is sort of amazing to me as a ballpark designer, that the field could fit, that you could even have enough room for the stands. It doesn't really meet today's modern standards, but we think that that significance, especially for a ballpark, is really great. And I make a distinction between a ballpark and a stadium. We use the term ballpark because it is a small, intimate facility that can knit into the fabric of a neighborhood. It's not a very tall building. It's about 3 stories. We think it will integrate very well with the surrounding area. There's many different components of the site plan that you see here. You have the ballpark in the middle, the greenway that's running more or less east to west. Rich referenced the new parking deck built for the state to replace parking. I have about 1,000 cars. There's private development that's already part of the plan. What we hope for generally with these projects is that they serve to be a catalyst for the surrounding neighborhoods, for private development to continue to develop in the area and make the area a true neighborhood. And that already exists with this project. We have 2 private commitments on Jefferson and along 3rd Avenue. We've got new public open space to knit into the greenway, as well as the Library and Archives project and the future State Museum. That's a lot of development in one area of town that currently is really pretty desolate, to be honest. It's empty parking lots, not a lot going on down there. We hope this area really begins to knit together Germantown, Salemtown, and downtown Nashville. Let's go. So this is a 3-dimensional view, again going over the components of the project. This is multifamily housing, and the white here that already exists. The blue masses that you see on the right-hand side of the slide are future mixed-use development. The ballpark is in the middle, and more multifamily mixed use along Jefferson.
Bruce, you might mention that the ball field itself is going to be recessed, what, 12 to 14 feet?
14 feet below street level. We think that's really significant because as you go along the greenway, you'll be able to look down into this great 3-acre emerald green grass field. It's really a great magnet in an urban environment. So we think it'll be a really key element in catalyzing this neighborhood for development. So this is a view. Another significant part of the site is just the tremendous view that you have and the opportunity you have to immediately identify yourself in downtown Nashville. We think it's a great skyline view. We think that view will really become a marquee snapshot for this project. And here's a higher aerial view so that you can see a few more of the buildings looking back toward downtown. And you see the buildings along 3rd, the open space along 5th. The ballpark is really set back from the street to allow the neighborhood to develop and make a 24/7 destination without impacting the surrounding neighborhood. So these are some comparable projects to what we've done around the country. This project is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I knew it was Indiana. What we did here was a single-A ballpark, but about the same capacity. Going back to the ballpark idea, we think this ballpark's going to be about 10,000 seats in capacity, but only 8,500 or so of those seats are actually fixed seats. There's going to be grass berms, a lot of areas for families and children to play. What's really great about minor league baseball is it's affordable family entertainment. And we think that's a really great thing for this neighborhood. This is Memphis, across your fair state. We were part of this project as well. Again, the development that happened right adjacent to the ballpark, it happened over time. And we're talking about here that development really being a key component from the very beginning. So I want to talk a little bit about 4th Avenue. We see 4th Avenue north of the Greenway, south of Jackson, that's the ballpark. But 4th Avenue south of the Greenway, headed back toward downtown, becoming a key pedestrian link, a key pedestrian component to bring people in from downtown. Typically what happens is you have all these existing parking assets downtown that go unutilized in the evenings. And so all that parking exists. People can take advantage of that in the downtown district and walk to the ballpark. We did an analysis showing that within a 3/4 mile radius, there are about 17,000 spaces available for parking. Now, obviously, not all of that's going to be used for the ballpark. But I think it's key to understand that this ballpark needs about 3,000 of those spaces. So we're very confident that there's a lot of parking available in the downtown area that can serve the ballpark without impacting the surrounding neighborhoods. These are some images of greenway projects that we've done in the past. We really think the ballpark can become a park in the park. It really can become an extension of that parkway system. Good. This is an example of that park in the park idea. At San Diego, for the Padres, again, it's a different scale ballpark, but it really is knit into the fabric of the neighborhood. The ballpark really becomes an extension of a public park. And when there's not games going on, people can really take advantage of that public open space.
We know that from past experience and all this, these are things that we're going to have to be addressing. These items are always going to be discussed. Lighting, sound, parking, traffic, pedestrian connections. So if we can just kind of take those one at a time. Again, we're still in the early phases of design. We still haven't worked out a lot of the details about how these are going to work, but lighting, Bruce?
So modern day field lighting is very efficient. We're going to employ a lighting system that directs the light to the playing field. We don't expect to get very much spill light on surrounding streets. We've recessed the field. We have the setbacks. Boy, it's really... And those early planning moves, we think, have been made to try to mitigate the lighting. One of the significant things about minor league baseball is a lot of kids come to the events. And so typically the events are over by 10 o'clock. You know, and the team knows that. They start the games about 7 o'clock so that there's not a lot of late night impact to the ballpark or to the surrounding neighborhoods from the ballpark. We know sound is an issue. We use a distributed sound system so that the overall volume level is lower, but there's more speakers closer to the people in the stands so that that sound doesn't spill out again to the surrounding neighborhoods. Many of the key planning factors, again, the setbacks from the street, the surrounding massing, and really directing the sound away from the neighborhoods. Good. What about fireworks? I think we're going to address questions at the end. I think if you have a comment card or we can get you a comment card, this young lady up here will help you with that.
Parking, as we've discussed, there's a 1,000-car parking garage that's going to be under construction. But also we're going to be encouraging a lot of people to walk to the stadium. We want a strong pedestrian connection. I walk to the Titans game. I live downtown, so it's the best way to go to the game. And so we're going to try to encourage that along 5th and 3rd Avenue, particularly. And those areas are things that we're going to be focusing on. There are several service lots in the area that I'm sure will be offered up for Sounds games, but on the most part, we're going to feed it from the south. And that's really where most of the vehicular traffic is going to come from. Certainly people living in Germantown and Salem Town and other areas around will be encouraged to walk to it, and that's the thing that we really like about this site. Again, it's game day. They play 72 games a year, plus there'll be some other games played along the time. But The state's going to use it in the daytime, and that's part of the deal during the state's business hours. As I said, 3rd and 5th will be a natural access. We'll be looking at, we've got RPM Consulting is doing a traffic study to see how to impact. We're going to be looking at shuttles and other things that can get people around to other commercial districts in the region. And then, to underline it over and over again, we really want this to be a neighborhood park that you feel comfortable walking to. It's going to have a lot of entrances across the greenway and other areas to get to it. And that's our goal, is to try to encourage that kind of access.
Let me just close the program, and then we're going to turn it back to Doug Sloan for questions from the audience and cards that have been asked. But just briefly, the way we view this project is that it has some significant benefits to not just this area, but the overall city. Obviously, those who have gone to Greer Stadium know that it's old and it's really run-down facility. Not by any lack of care by the owners, it simply is its time has come. It's past its time for use. And minor league baseball is a proven product in this community, and we see it only growing with a new facility and really having a greater fan experience, really for family entertainment. It's the most family-friendly of all the professional sports from a cost perspective, and we think this location will only bring out more and more family use in the facility and will be designed to take advantage of that. Economic development, clearly, one of the key goals for us at any project we do is what are the economic benefits. I think that others who've lived here longer than I have, and I've lived here a long time, could speak about Jefferson Street and the important role that Jefferson Street has always played to the African American citizens of this community. We see this project revitalizing Jefferson Street in a way that hasn't been done. Hey, it's the first time I've ever gotten applause. I appreciate that. I may call it quits right now and just walk out and call it no. Thank you. But sincerely, activate an area of town that has been underserved and provide that spark from a connectivity standpoint. Doug Sloan, the Planning Commission, has already talked about it. But there is a gap between what's happening in Germantown and Salem Town and what's happening in downtown. And by putting this facility there and the development that's going to come with it really fills in that gap and makes it all one whole and improves the connectivity for the whole area. And finally, for our friends who support parks and greenways, we're going to have another park, which is going to be used for the many residents who already live in this community and for others who want to come visit. So we see it as having just a massive amount of positive for the city. As I said earlier, we've got a lot of work to do. Nothing's done, but over the next few weeks, we hope to finalize our agreement with the state, and we hope to present things to the City Council and the Sports Authority for their approval, hopefully before the end of the year. With that, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read some of the question cards, but I will point out that a lot of these cards were answered during the presentation, so they'll be a little repetitive, but I think they're worth repeating. One of the first ones is right on the point, Rich, that you were just talking about. Why is this location an important historic marker for Nashville? And along with that, who played at Sulphur Dell, and why is that significant now?
Well, I think the historic side, if you think about the history of this site, who's played there? I mean, Babe Ruth played there, Hank Aaron's played there, B.B. King's played there, to get a little off baseball for a second, but a pretty good entertainer. Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, a lot of the old old Milwaukee Braves. So it's been really a baseball history has played in that spot, and we think if there's a possibility of bringing, of any sport in America, baseball probably is the most historic and sort of lives on its past so much. And to be able to build a new modern ballpark where the old park was located, we think is just an added benefit to the overall project. Plus, when you couple that with the economic development and what it brings to this area, to us, it's by far the best site in the city of Nashville for a minor league park.
Well, let me ask this, because when I came in, I bumped into more than just a couple of people who said that they remember coming out. Can I see a show of hands? How many people came out when it was Sulphur Dell? How many are here today that And you can look around. There's a lot of history to this site and a lot of memories to this site. And I told Rich I wasn't going to bring this up, but my great-grandparents met at this site. They met at a ball game at Sulphur Dell.
Now,
Okay.
he was going to bring it up, trust me. He said he just was trying to figure out how and when he was going to be able to work it into the conversation.
He said I wouldn't be able to resist. All right, the next one. Assuming that current employees at Greer will be unaffected, how many new jobs are forecasted to be created, and what kind of jobs will they be?
I think obviously this is a work in progress, and the Sounds over time will be able to answer this better. But I think they envision that they'll have additional staff needs for this facility over where they have currently at Greer Stadium. But I think the important thing here is the jobs that will be created, especially during the construction of the stadium and the construction of the ancillary development around it. I think there'll be literally hundreds of jobs that are created during that period of time with a lot of economic impact and ripple effect throughout the whole economy.
The history that Rich talked about and that these questions have gone back to, one of the questions is, will there be any sort of design elements that will be included that will give a nod to that history?
Absolutely. We're still trying to figure out how to make that work. Again, we're in the early stages of the design, but the Sounds ownership is committed to that, and we'll talk about how to blend that history, and at some point in time, the greenway and how it goes down, we may no longer have the right fielder standing up on a bank that's a 45-degree angle, but we may be able to have something that reflects that.
If we have baseball fans here, everybody knows baseball is the most historic sport, right? I mean, baseball fans track statistics back to the 1880s. So history is incredibly key to baseball. We think it's a great theme for this ballpark, and I think it's part of its brand is to really retell that historic story.
Okay, the next one, and it'll stay with you, I believe. What will the lighting for the development look like and its impact on the neighborhood?
Well, I think we addressed that a little bit. One thing I didn't mention was the height of the light poles. We expect them to be around 100 feet tall, but again, they're going to be very directed, very efficient. They're only on about 3 hours for a game, and then they go to housekeeping lighting, so there really won't be any lighting going on after 10 o'clock at night or so.
Underline that it's the field is centered between 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue, and it's going to be about 100 feet or so from each of those streets to the playing field. So it's not right on the edge of those areas, so it's somewhat isolated in the middle of the block.
That's right.
And I know that we talked about earlier the elevation of the ball field itself.
Yeah, and so the field is recessed below grade. You know, one of the great things about that also is that the arrival sequence for the fan is very comfortable. You just walk in off the street, you get to the concourse, and the whole field really opens up in front of you. So there aren't a lot of steps that go up and a lot of climbing, and then you finally get to your seat. All the seats are down toward the playing field. The playing field we think will be 14 feet or so below street level.
Many of the comment cards that talk about lighting also talk about sound, and will it be broadcast back into the neighborhoods? How's that going to be controlled?
Yep, and again, I think we talked about that, but the distributed sound system, the setbacks, the massing, we're doing what we can to really pull the ballpark in so that those neighborhood impacts aren't really felt without.
This question talks about, we talked about it all knitting together the different communities, including Jefferson Street and the communities to the north of that. One of these questions asks about how are the street connections going to work with the ballpark? How will the sidewalk systems work?
Well, again, we want to make it part of the neighborhood. And so we want to make sure we have adequate setbacks to the buildings to allow for street trees, for sidewalks. We'd love to see on-street parking. Those are really key elements of creating a neighborhood. And those approaches to the ballpark will really be from downtown, up 5th Avenue, up 4th Avenue. We'll have entrances around the ballpark. Ron mentioned that earlier. Right now we're thinking about 4 or 5 different entry points. So it's really a diffuse arrival pattern there isn't like one central entry where you'll have crowds and crowds of people.
It's also worth underlining the fact that the state has two monumental buildings planned across Fifth Avenue on the west side. They're going to be building, the first one will be a library and archives building, which will be on a grand scale, and it's going to be fronting on Fifth as well as on Bicentennial Mall. And then after that is the State Museum. So that whole corridor is going to have a dramatically different look when all this is complete. But the pedestrian access, the sidewalks, and all that is going to be and the landscape is going to be a very important part of that.
So there's the garage that's on the south side, right? And there's additional parking that direction, right, as you go into downtown?
Yeah, absolutely. Think of all the parking garages in downtown with office workers who typically leave at 5 or so. All those spaces are available in the evenings. And so I think a lot of that parking is going to take place in downtown. That's what we've seen historically over our 30 years of practice, is that those underutilized evening parking spaces really become the places that people find to park and walk to the ballpark.
We've talked about how the ballpark will be used during games, but there's some questions here as to how the ballpark will be used for other purposes.
Yeah. Well, we know that the Sounds are committed to making this a year-round facility. They really want to promote the use of the building off game day. And so some of those typical uses that we see, believe it or not, we've had Easter Sunday services in our ballparks. We've had wedding receptions. There are all kinds of different, the team will call it non-traditional revenue. Basically, selling this giant catering and gathering space those other games or those other days of the year when they're not having a baseball game. And trust me, the uses are anything you can imagine. Any type of a big gathering where lots of people come together. That's what they'll use it for.
Okay, Germantown is a vibrant community that is already experiencing growing pains, supporting all the businesses with parking. What will be done to address parking, congestion issues in the neighborhoods on game days? And I think that the answer is pretty much the same, that we believe that there's adequate parking to the south.
I think the other thing to add is that obviously once the state, if it opens, once we do the ballpark and it opens, we won't really know traffic patterns. We'll be fine until it opens and we see what people are actually doing. And obviously if it starts being a situation where people are parking in the neighborhoods in Germantown, then we're going to take steps like we do in other places in the city to prevent that from happening. So we're prepared to do that at the right time if it becomes a necessity. But the important thing is that we've got a lot of parking already built into this project, which a lot of projects don't have. So it should be minimal going into it, but we're going to work with the community to make sure it works for everyone.
This one says, as a father, will it be safe at night to walk the Greenway and use the park?
Well, I think generally speaking, I think our parks and our greenway system are safe today, and I think by having increased activity there between what the state buildings are going to do, between having the ballpark, there's going to be additional multifamily units, retail units. There's just going to be a lot more activity, which should do nothing but make make everyone feel safer in what is already a fairly safe neighborhood.
And I'm sorry, I don't know if you already spoke about how the Greenway will interact with the stadium during the ball games. Will they have access to the Greenway, or how will that work?
Well, for those hours of the game, we anticipate that the Greenway will really become part of the ballpark. So when the game is over, the gates are open, and then the ballpark really flows into the Greenway. So we see it as really integrated and really together in terms of how the ballpark and the Greenway interact.
It's an interesting question, and I'm not sure that the panel's adequate to address it. It says there's a need to provide our city's youth with the opportunity to understand and learn the value of playing amateur organized baseball. Is this one of the foundations for the ballpark's organization and commitment to the city?
Well, I think obviously that's something we can address better with the Sounds ownership at the appropriate time. But I do know that they are committed to making the park available for youth groups and high school games and things of that nature on an ongoing basis. So I know they are very open to that concept. The details just have to be worked out with the ownership.
The next question, I think, is really addressing not necessarily just the ballpark, but what's expected to come around the ballpark. It says residents of neighboring communities in Jefferson Street, Buena Vista Hope Gardens feel that real development should benefit the residents. And with the lack of commercial options, grocery, retail, and industry, how will this baseball park solve this issue?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think it's going to create some economic opportunity, which is the first thing. And I think that obviously the plans are still being worked out for the private development that's going to be done. But I think it will include some retail and everyday use in addition to multifamily. So I think there will be more opportunities and more places to go than we currently have in the area.
Those kind of services do follow density. And by adding density along Jefferson Street, it's going to really help there. By adding density around the ballpark is going to really help generate a demand where people are willing to invest in those kind of retail operations.
I'm trying to sort through the parking questions. That seems to be the most popular one.
Find some softballs.
Yeah, no, there's no softballs here.
We're playing hardball here, don't we? We don't play softball.
Germantown can, and I believe this question came up during the presentation, but Germantown can currently hear the fireworks at the current Sound Stadium. Will there be any measures put in place to address the noise, the frequency of these?
I mean, that, again, is an operational issue down the road that we'll have to think about. I know that the Sounds do fireworks. I'm not sure how often they employ them. And that's something we just, as we get into this, we start having meetings with the communities to understand concerns. We'll express those to the ownership, and we'll try to work and come up with a happy medium for what the community would find acceptable. I don't have an answer for you today, but I'm sure we want this to work for everyone, and so there will be opportunity for input, and we'll hear what the community has to say and what their concerns are.
I don't see anybody from MTA here today, but this question is, will there be a dedicated trolley service to downtown at 2nd Avenue? I think in the way that a lot of those are used for the stadium.
Yeah, I think we're clearly going to work towards having some kind of shuttle service from the downtown parking lots to the the ballpark. It just makes sense, and we don't have all the answers today, but that just seems to make a lot of sense, and I'm sure we will get that done.
Okay. And I know it's a little early in the process to have the question that we always have, I think, come up with any major project in Nashville, and that is the jobs associated with the actual development and the building itself.
Well, I think the city in recent years has demonstrated a commitment to expanding the network of firms and individuals who reap some of the benefit of construction jobs. The Convention Center and the Omni Hotel demonstrated the city's commitment, and both of those, around 30% of the work was done by DBEs, just small and minority firms. That would be the intent on a project, on all major public projects like this, and that'll be written into all the guidelines. So I see a couple councilmen here who will insist upon that, and we will try to anticipate that and build it into everything as it presented to the council. That's going to be a requirement.
Okay. What will happen to 3rd and 4th Avenue North? The plans I saw look like 4th is being removed and 3rd is being made two-way.
As everybody recalls, 4th Avenue actually turns and merges into 3rd. So we are doing a traffic study to look at the impact. We will be closing 4th from about midway up above Harrison to Jackson Street. Again, we're gonna have to analyze that. One thing I want to say is that we're gonna have a couple of panels, not panels, but just some of the consultants are gonna be in the back to discuss these issues, and we'll have some drawings. So if anybody wants to talk one-on-one when we're through with this part, we can talk in more detail about that. But again, RPM Consulting is going to be analyzing the best way and looking at current traffic patterns and how they may be modified.
No mention of what participation contribution will come from the Sounds.
Let me just say that when the Sounds approached the city, approached the mayor and said, we'd like to talk again about maybe reopening talks about a new ballpark, they said two things. One is that they thought Sulphur Dell was a good site and they wanted to explore that site. And two, they're willing to put some real financial commitment into the stadium. And once they said those two things, we said we're willing to start talking about another ballpark and seeing if we can make it happen. So the Sounds will be making a deep financial commitment to this. We'll pay for a portion of it, and so all those details of the financing are still being fine-tuned. Will be presented at the appropriate time to the council, but as they say, the Sounds will definitely have skin in the game in this project.
There are a lot of questions that repeat, and I know that we've talked about it a little bit, but exactly how 4th and Harrison will work and what that will look like when the ballpark's finished.
As Bruce showed in his presentation, as Bruce presented in that, in Denver they've got an approach to Coors Field that's a very formal approach, and so we're looking at this area right in here as being an area that will be a major pedestrian entrance into the stadium, so and into the ballpark. So.
Okay, one question that we've received, and I don't know that it really has anything to do with this development in particular, but I feel like I have to mention it because we have a lot of cards that mention it, and that is the railroad tracks and the noise from the railroad tracks. And I don't know that this development's going to be able to address that question. I know that this development's probably not going to be able to address that question, but that is one comment that's come up a number of times.
You know, I can maybe take that. You know, people move downtown. They move to an urban environment because they like activity. I think it's just part of the neighborhood. You know, it's part of what's going on there. Obviously, we can't affect the railroad tracks from our ballpark, but the things, the activity, the light, the sound, for small periods of the year, that's actually part of the ambiance of what urban environments are all about, and what urban living is all about. People move there for that activity and those types of things going on.
Well, and I don't think it's just the train noise itself, because I agree with you. I had an office that was right next to the train, and I used to have to put people on hold until it went by, and then I'd start talking to them again. But I know that Council Lady Gilmore for years has worked on this issue about the horn blowing, and she's continuing to work on it. I see the emails that as she continues to try to pursue getting the horn blowing stopped. And so there already is steps outside of this project to deal with the horn blowing, and Council Lady Gilmore, I think, is the one championing that. Have any more? Flooding. Flooding has been a problem in the past. With this area being lowered 14 feet, how will it deal with the flooding?
Yeah, that's an issue we're keenly aware of. We're taking steps that we think that can be managed. I personally did a project on the Mississippi River, and this project is very similar. There are ways to manage flooding. Right now, we're locating the majority of any built space above the 2010 flood elevation. There are ways to dewater and pump that groundwater that we think may be present there, and any flood management systems. The great thing that we have going for us is that the typical systems we put in for a playing field are essentially a giant dewatering system. All the drainage tile and everything that goes under a modern playing field can be used for that same flood mitigation, groundwater mitigation system.
Okay, I believe that covers most of the issues that were sent to us through the cards. Now, what we're going to do after this is that we'll all still be here to answer questions. We also have Bob Murphy, who is an expert on traffic controls, and he'll be here, and Mark Macy with Public Works, and we'll stay here to answer questions as long as it needs to be. But I appreciate the turnout, very excited by the number of people that are here, and I hope, and we will have more community meetings. We're the planning department. If you're a community group in this area and you'd like the planning department to put together a presentation and bring it out to your community meeting, please contact us. We'd love to do that because we want to continue to get input from the community. This is just the first step in this process. There's also going to be meetings within the council. There'll be meetings with the state, all of which will have public input. So we look forward to this conversation continuing, and we appreciate everybody coming out today. Thank you.